What was the most NSFW experience you've had at work? Story 1. Our CFO asked me to hack into the website of a photographer who had taken erotic pregnancy photos of him and his wife. Apparently, the photographer was pulling a bait and switch and had jacked up the price, and the CFO felt entitled to steal them for free. I was going to tell him it was unlikely I could just hack the site because it's not like in the movies, but he showed me a sample image, and god damn it, the image source was like gallery.cgi blah 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 blah, watermark equal true, size equal small. What are the odds? I told him I could do it, but he said that due to the sensitive nature of the content, I couldn't work on my own computer or leave his office until it was done, and I had to swear to secrecy. Also, he never got up from the only chair, so I had to kneel at his computer installing Perl and wget and teasing out the numbering system for the pictures. 30 minutes later, I staggered back into the cubicle farm, and my fellow programmers were like, "What was the secret thing he wanted you to help with?" And I said, "I'm not allowed to talk about it, but my knees are really sore and I'm going to go home early today." One of the guys literally did a spit take before I realized how that sounded. I never did live that down, although I did memorize the URL for the photos in case I ever needed those pics in an emergency. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. I worked overnight as a convenience store clerk when I was 20. A drunk woman came in and was thirsty but had no money. I offered her coffee for free since it's not inventoried, or some tap water, but she didn't want them. She wanted apple juice. She offered to flash me for some apple juice. I said, sure. She went off camera and lifted her top and bra for like 3 seconds. 3 great seconds. She went and took 2 apple juices. I didn't mind. She left happy, I was happy. It was a good night and all it cost was 2 apple juices on my tab. Story 3. I was working at some big Canadian coffee chain when I was 16 and there was an annual meeting that the manager was organizing. I guess she couldn't find a babysitter for her son, so she brought him along. The problem with this is that he was actually a man in his 20s with the mental capacity of a toddler. The guy was easily a head taller than me and would wander onto the floor behind the counter and would come back into the kitchen where I was baking donuts and would simply take it and eat it in front of me. Also, despite acting like a toddler, he apparently still had adult impulses and decided that pulling up women's shirts and grabbing breasts and butts was a good way to pass the time. So here I am, a 16-year-old trying to do my goddamn job when the manager's 21-year-old mentally challenged son just decided to firmly grope my butt. I turned to him and told him not to do that and to not touch me. Why? He asked me. I'm a man. Yeah, I'm glad I'm out of there. The manager was a miserable old woman anyway. Story 4. When I first started working in the hotel industry, a Delta flight attendant took a liking to me and kissed me on the mouth unexpectedly when she was very drunk. After that, she went out for a smoke and I told the bartender that she needed to be cut off, especially because I knew their crew had a morning flight in less than 5 hours. She came in and went back to the bar, and watching from afar, I saw the bartender dump her beer and then point at me when she got upset. I began helping a VIP guest get up to his room, thinking that there was no way she could hop in the elevator before we ascended. False. She jumped in through the gap in the doors, Indiana Jones style, and screamed at me about how I ruined her night, all while holding her middle finger up an inch from my face. She got out on a random floor, and after the doors closed, this Fortune 500 CEO guest just nonchalantly said, "What did you do? Get her pregnant?" Long story short, she was so drunk she couldn't remember her room number, caused a huge inconvenience for security, and wasn't listed as a guest at all on any of the rooms we had because of their company contract. She eventually made it into the room in the early hours of the morning, but because of her behavior, our hotel property had to contact Delta. And I'm assuming she was let go or relocated, because I never saw her again with our regular flight crew. To answer the question, it's probably a toss-up between that experience or the time that a mother offered me $500 to do a strip show for her daughter's bachelorette party. Story 5. I sell mattresses, and back when I first started, I had a woman come in that looked straight out of Jersey Shore. I built some rapport and based on her needs recommended she try a bed. Instead of just laying on the bed like a normal human being, she proceeded to climb on the bed on all fours. With her butt facing me, she looked over her left shoulder back at me and said, "I feel like I could get a really good bang in on this bed." Being new, I wasn't really sure how to respond, so I just said, "Yeah, I'm sure you could." Story 6. The other night on a graveyard shift at my place of work, I was going from the front office to the kitchen to put some dishes away. To get to the kitchen, I decided to take the shortcut through the employee lounge. I opened the door and briskly hopped up a few stairs and heard the squeaking of someone getting up from a leather couch seat we have in the room. A coworker of mine seemed particularly shocked and was standing there, breathing heavily with a flushed face and neck. I asked her how she's doing, and while adjusting her blouse, she said fine, just waiting for some stuff copies to finish printing. I said okay, playing dumb, and went to the kitchen. On my way back to the front, I stopped by the copy machine and saw no copies being made, and I'm quite sure I walked in on my coworker pleasuring herself at 4 a.m. Story 7. When I was 18, I was doing IT work for a small financial services company/accounting firm. Basically, I was converting all of their paper files into electronic files and doing IT troubleshooting in the office. One of the bookkeepers was about 35 but pretty attractive, and she kept telling me she had trouble logging in from home. So I kept insisting that she should bring her laptop into work, but she never did. Eventually, I went to her apartment to fix a simple issue, but she told me her laptop was at work. I was really annoyed, until she started blowing me. This continued as a daily thing in the filing room and pounded it out in the stairwell till I got fired when rumors spread because she used to hook up with one of the managing partners and he got mad about it. Best job I ever had. I used to set the scanner to run on ultra-high scans, so a folder used to take 30 minutes to scan. I got paid to sit in front of a computer and watch Netflix, while occasionally scanning folders and frequent getting your dong sucked breaks. Story 8. Posted this before. I used to be a store manager at a sneaker/sporting goods store in my mall. One of my coworkers was banging one of my teenage underaged employees in the back stockroom after the store closed on a regular basis. This was going on for several months, apparently. I found out when said teenager came to me and she said that my co-manager promised her a raise that she never got. I asked her why he said that he would give her a raise. That is when she told me about the banging in the stockroom. I had to call the police and corporate about this. We arranged a sting with the help of the girl. She made a plan with the police to meet up with my co-manager after work. Basically, they caught him with his pants down. Story 9. Worked for a lawyer in a shared office with a few other attorneys. One of the attorneys, Albert, was a grumpy, narcissistic a-hole. Another one of the attorneys had a young female assistant named Isabel. We hit it off and got drinks after work a couple of times. She had a boyfriend at the time, but she told me that she had been planning to break up with him for a while, and it seemed like something could definitely happen between us. The a-hole lawyer, who was 20 years older than Isabel, took her to dinner, presumably as a professional guidance thing, but tried to kiss her. She was not having it. A couple weeks later, after she broke up with her boyfriend, we banged in Albert's storage room on top of his old case files. Story 10. I'm an EMT in Boston, and I just wanted to share this experience with you because it's kind of funny, but weird and sad. So, it starts as a typical 911 call. An elderly female fell and there is a possible head wound. We arrive on scene to find fire is already there and inside, so we proceed right in. The old woman lives alone and fell, hit her head and cut it in the process and passed out. She had woken up, found her head was bleeding, and crawled to a phone to call her granddaughter for help. It was the granddaughter who called 911. The base of the walls looked like a horror movie, her fingers leaving bloody streaks down the hall where she crawled. Patient lived and made it home fine. So the scene was not great. We find the grandmother and start care, standard stuff. However, the granddaughter is there too, and she is just flirty as hell and not subtle about it. She was hiking up her dress past her, lower extremities and towards her lower abdomen, and she wasn't wearing any underwear. Also, the granddaughter is in her late 20s for reference. I did my best to ignore her, but she was right there in my face. She was flashing myself, my partner, and the 3 firemen while her grandmother was being backboarded and collared, bleeding right in front of her. Story 11. Used to work at a restaurant in Texas called Jim's. I was in high school and just got kicked out of the house for being a little crap and taking my aunt's car to see this chick in the middle of the night. Anyway, I had to make ends meet to pay rent and food, so I started working the late shifts the restaurant would offer. There was a girl there who would only work those shifts because her boyfriend would work during the day and she needed the car to get to work. One day she showed up like 2 hours late and she looks upset. I overheard her telling the manager her boyfriend wouldn't let her use the car, so she had to take the bus after a huge fight. Fast forward to the end of the shift, which was about 1 a.m. She was calm now and the place was dead, so we're just standing around. Since she came in last, she would be the one to close the store, but since it was after the buses stopped, she asked me for a ride. I said, yeah, no problem. She said she would make it up to me. The store closes and I'm waiting in my car for her to come out. The manager stayed to do paperwork. She gets in the car and just asks me if I'd ever been blown before. I had several times up until this point, but I still tell her no. She grabs my dong and starts massaging it till it's hard and then takes it out and just starts sucking it. So we finish up and then I say, well, where am I taking you? She said, don't worry, my boyfriend will be here in a minute. So I took off when she got out. Women are frickin' ruthless. Story 12. My former boss used to bang hookers in the office next to mine. Now, these were not nice escorts, but like druggies. I could hear and smell everything, and they would walk past my office door 30 to 45 minutes later, all sweaty and stinky, and act like nothing happened. This one lady only had 8 teeth in her whole head. I met her at our front gate, and she told me that she was from the bank and was here to see my boss. Story 13. Not my work, but once a realtor that I wanted to hook up with took some keys to an apartment he was showing that day and banged me inside of it while he was on the clock. Banging in an empty apartment, 10 out of 10, would do it again. Finding out that the realtor you were trying to hook up with has a microdong, doesn't know how to use his tongue, and won't stop texting you after the fact because he thinks that one hookup means you two are bound for life, 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Don't let crazy put their dong in you, folks. Story 14. I used to work at a lab at my former university. Beside the lab was my office, my boss's office, which you had to walk through mine to get to, and a storage room with biological equipment connected to my office. One day I was working late, like 9 p.m., and my girlfriend was in the area, so she stopped by. Anyway, things ended up getting hot and heavy in my office, and at one point I have her sitting on the desk, pants off, and we're going at it. I hear someone coming down the hall taking their keys out. Now, this is the only locked door in the corridor, so I know where they're headed. We immediately stop, I turn my monitor off, and we get into the storage room as fast as possible, pants in hand. Since I'm wearing only a rubber on my bottom half, we go around the corner to the darkest area of the storage room. The room is an L, so you would need to take about 2 steps in to see us. I hear someone start rummaging around in my boss's office, then walk back into my office. All I can think of is, oh, please don't come in here. The next thing you know, the storage room door is being unlocked. They step in, and they're about 6 feet from us now. Without turning the light on, they grab something from a shelf closest to the door and leave. The next morning, my boss asks me how late I worked because she came back around 9 to grab something and the light was still on. Story 15. Big call center. A couple hundred people at cubicles in a big open space. One guy stands up and without saying a word, stabs himself in the neck with a pen. Blood goes everywhere. People run, scream, pass out. They sent us all home for 2 days. Another time, a different company worked in a tall building. A woman jumped off the roof and landed just outside the main entrance. She basically exploded. Brains and guts all over the front doors and windows of the first floor. Rumor had it, she was diagnosed with cancer and decided that this was the way to go. Those 2 incidents were pretty not safe at work. Story 16. Guy walks into my store wearing a ratty old bathrobe, one of the shorter ones that comes down just to around the knees. He comes up to my till with a soda and brings a fistful of change out of the robe's pocket. While counting out coins, he casually mentions, "I'm doing my laundry." Then with a sly nod crotchward and a grin adds, "all of it." Speechless, I take the money and just put it in the till. I turn back with his receipt just in time to see him fumble his coins and drop a bunch to the ground. Yes, he bent over right in front of me to pick them all up. No, he was not lying about doing all of his laundry. And no, there isn't enough eye bleach in the whole world for the things I saw at that store. Story 17. One time I was standing on top of an 18-foot ladder, like actually on top of the ladder. Not a step, but a flat apex part that says, "Do not step." And I accidentally cut into a live wire above my head. My intern unplugged it from the wall so I could take down a hanging light fixture, and it turned out he unplugged the wrong one. Dull wire cutters and my Leatherman didn't completely sever it, so the electricity coursing through my hand and arm made the muscles lock down, and I couldn't let go of the tool, too. I don't know how I didn't fall. When I told my mom about this, I said, and that's the closest I ever came to dying. She said I came much closer growing up, but was unaware of it. Story 18. As a kid in a small town, we had very little to do, so most days in the summer we'd end up hanging at a local hockey arena because it had air conditioning and plenty of places to screw around and a snack bar. Years later, my high school girlfriend gets a job at the snack bar and tells me to come visit her at work. It had all the classic benefits you could want. Free poutine, chicken fingers, control of the gravy situation, and plenty of chocolate bars. But when the hockey families came in to play tournaments, the place was a zoo. Kids everywhere, parents galore, and she would be slanging snacks while I sit inside the stand, out of sight, just hanging out. One day, during a packed house, she tells me she's going on break, pulls down this big metal curtain and locks it, as well as the 2 doors, with us inside the snack shack. Eyes start to wander, and that break time is ticking away, so I picked her up and put her on the cleanest counter I could find, pulled each other's clothes off, and banged like animals in a cage. All while we could hear people banging on the metal curtain waiting for her to return to work so they could order a pick-me-up. Very not sanitary for work. Story 18. When I was 15, I used to do research at my dad's company. Every time I would go in there, I had an office to myself, away from anyone else. So I would look up some dirty pictures online and print them out so no one would see what was on my computer screen. This is before cell phones had internet capabilities. Well, I had forgotten that I printed out a few pictures and they were left on the printer over the weekend. And on Monday, our secretary found all the pictures I printed and there was a lynch mob out for whoever printed them. I would always clear my history, but it led to us finding out that there was an employee who left his computer on all weekend, logged into an adult site that everyone in the office ended up seeing. He had 5 tabs up on his computer and some of it was illegal. He was fired on the spot and was eventually arrested for the illegal stuff. Story 19. This 85-year-old lady went crazy after procedure when she came back to the ICU. After getting the report from the OR nurses, I was performing my assessment on her and I noticed a weird feeling in the air, like something wasn't right. I noticed something moving under the sheets and she appears to be hip thrusting. I then notice her facial expressions. She's pursing her lips and moaning. She notices that I'm in the room and starts talking dirty to me, saying really nasty things. She tries to grab my hands and I see what she tries to do and she attempts to go down towards the bean. I say, hell no, went and grabbed another nurse. I told her what was going on as she enters the room and she doesn't believe me. She then notices the activity and hears her dirty talk and immediately laughs and grabs our charge nurse. Well, she doesn't believe it either until she witnesses it for herself. The lady gives no craps of the other bystanders and still grabs for my hands, tries to manipulate me into bringing my face near hers to kiss me, and cries. We determined that propofol caused this reaction and just continued regular monitoring. I documented what happened in note, as does the charge nurse, but on a legal scale. The next week, everyone is joking about it. Some nurses even say to take my hands as a joke. Male ICU nurse, by the way. Story 20. Worked for a company that did commercial/residential solar panel installs and whole house water and air purification. This just absolutely beautiful Spanish girl came to work there named Noella. We flirted and stuff a bit, but one day she just up and kissed me in the break room. It went real wild after that. Banging on the big oval conference table in the installers department at night since they weren't there. In the car quickies on breaks when I wasn't in the office. It was fun for a while, but her parents hated the idea of her dating a white guy and basically forced her to date this family friend of their son who was also Hispanic. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted. Only girl I've been with that's called me Poppy, but I liked it.